Good evening, everybody. I think it's time to sort of stop the agents. Welcome to this licensing environment committee this evening. To my left, my colleague will give you housekeeping.
Welcome to today's meeting. This is a public meeting and members of the public and press are permitted to report on the proceedings. Reporting includes filming, photographing, making an audio recording and providing commentary on proceedings. Please note this meeting is recorded and streamed live. These recordings are published on the relevant meeting page on the Council's website. By choosing to attend this public meeting, you are deemed to have given your consent to being filmed or recorded and for any footage to be broadcast or published. If the alarm sounds, the premises must be evacuated immediately. Do not spend time collecting personal belongings. All emergency escape routes are clearly signed. Once you've left the building, the assembly point is in the High Street opposite the Guildhall. Members and other speakers are reminded to use their microphone when speaking.
Thank you, Nita. That's very helpful. Any substitutes? There you go. Thank you. Any declaration of interest? None? Right, good. And I come to nice to public participation. I think we have.
Yes, Chair.
Harris and Saz, welcome, and I'm sure that you're familiar with the territory. You have up to, I think, 50 minutes. I was corrected last time, so between you, if who likes to begin first, it's entirely up to you. So who wants to go first?
Yeah, good evening. I'm the chairman of the Worcester Taxi Drivers Association. Ahmed Sajad. Good evening, members, councillors. Basically, thank you for coming to the table today. I hope you're going to make a decision today regarding the fare increase. I don't want you, chairperson, to put a blame on Niall or Karen or anybody else regarding the fare increase. The proposals that are set out, but the proposals can be discussed by you members tonight, and I'm sure you could come up with a reasonable amount that is acceptable for the trade to accept by looking at all the figures. But the fuel crisis, there's no help from really the government. I took this photo today. It's 189.9. nearly £2 a litre. And then Lower Wick petrol station, 199.9. This was last night. So obviously you members are aware of the current situation. There is no real help from the government, but you guys can help the trade. And I don't think, Chair, you should be putting blame on anybody else. I think you should make a decision today by authorising a fare increase for us, a reasonable amount from you members, be it 30%, 40%. I think 5, 10 or 15 is not here nor there. 50, 60 is too much, but I think you can come up with a reasonable amount. You can discuss that between yourselves today and pass this amendment for us. And I don't think you should delay it anymore. So it'd be appreciated, and I don't want you to blame any of the councillors or Niall or anybody else saying that you need to go back to the paperwork, because you're aware of the current situation. For the last 5 years, none of you members have actually said, oh, where is the trade's proposal? So I think from next year onwards, you should implement a date that every year, as soon as all the fees are going up, you should put a proposal up as well for us, or ask the trade, this is the date. Every year, end of March, April, or the tax year, you should automatically give us a fare increase, because I think that is reasonable. Previously, it hasn't been done because the representatives of the trades have changed. So I think it'd be appreciated if you guys discussing the rest of the council fees and everything else, you should put that as an amendment in as a fare increase, which is honoured by the trade or respected by everybody else. I think you guys could do that. I mean, I'm sure if Niall's still here, he could put it on the agenda for January, February next year, and you should do that. But I think I'll leave it to you members, and I'm going to pass it on to Mr. Salim now. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, I must appreciate that you gave us a chance. You organized the meeting on urgent basis. I'm sure you got the sympathy for the trade as well. Thank you very much for everybody in the House. We are all aware that, as Mr. Sajjad mentioned, that the prices, oil prices are going up and up every day, and we don't know when they're going to stop. And I think it's a time to look after the trade as well. And we proposed, with the consultation of trade and the taxi base owners as well, who sat together, and we proposed, I think it was reasonable, considering trade and the customers as well. Now it's up to the committee, what do they choose and what percentage they can offer us. If everybody got, I think the proposal we gave was 390 for the first 860 mile to start with, and then 10p for every 60 mile. And we are just asking for 2 miles, basically. The rest of them is the same as it was before. So, because most of the customer and most we go further in normal circumstances is probably 2 miles radius in the city. And according to our proposal, to up to the 2 miles, it was 7.20. The first mile was 5.20, which is, I think, was reasonable. And the rest of them, and the tariff 2 was 490 to start with for 860 meters again, and then 10p for every 40 meters for first mile and second mile. First mile would have been £6.70, and there's 2 miles, up to 2 miles was £9.30. That was our proposal, and the rest of them obviously they can go back to the previous one. And bear in mind that the taxi drivers are very fair with the customers, because none of them they charge for their shoppings. The people use our taxis for the removals as well. Household removal things, we don't charge. For customers, we don't charge extra, though the council allow us to charge extra money, but as a good gesture, we don't charge anything extra. I think it's only anything they charge extra, 5-seaters and 6-seaters. They charge extra when they got 6 or 7 people. But rest of them, I can't see anybody charging extra money on it. So I think they are quite fair with the customers. And the cost, the living cost, other things are going up. Insurance, we have to wait when the renewal comes from April. Fuel prices, everybody knows. Service and parts, they all come from Europe, because we got Peugeot partners mostly, and the parts comes from from Europe, and they've gone up. Engine oil and other accessories, they all gone up. And we are taking, from probably last 5 years, we never had a taxi fare increase. I admit that there was a loophole, there was a bit lack of probably interest or communication as well in the past with the committee and the council as well. But I was very surprised to know that in the last 5 years, not even from the council suggested, hang on, trade is, they're never demanding it, and nobody's offered us as well either. So I don't know, what do you say this, that we feel that we are not looked after in the past as well. And we haven't got any support. That's most of the taxi drivers, they gave me their views that they don't get support from the council. Whenever they got a problem, they are blamed for. They are charged, taken the licenses away. 2 months later, they're not found guilty, and the license is given back. And the 2 months, they sat home. I think this is injustice with the drivers. And sorry, but these are the issues. I'm sorry, but these are the issues the taxi driver they conveyed to me. That I would say it on the behalf of them.
Can I, sorry, you don't want to throw your thunder away, but you're here to request a fare increase. That is another platform where you can make discussion. Please, I think you wind up, I've given you a leeway. Can you just wind up your 30 seconds?
The price, the fare increase, why is, as in Worcester, we are paying far too much plate fees as well. That's another charges. Malvern Hills, they charge £280, Tewkesbury 220, Whichever 236, and in Worcester, we pay £360 plus 2 inspections and 3rd MOT as well. So I think there's too much burden on Worcester City taxi drivers, and due to this, I got a Birmingham City only charge £94 for a plate. Yeah. So
I'm afraid I have to give you more than a lever. So we appreciate. Thank you. Thank you, Harris. Thank you, Sergeant. Let us pursue with the meeting. Members, can I draw your attention? I think it's the minutes. Can we? I think this is the minutes. What have I lost? I've lost my thunder now. Minutes of the last meeting. I don't know. It's got it on the here. I think. Yeah.
Chair, I don't think the minutes have been published from the last meeting yet, so we can't agree them.
I think. I think some of maybe I got a hard copy. It was a supplement meeting minutes that we had. They should be online. I think that the paperwork has not been served. They were online. I know there was some concern that it's slightly later than normal. I'm afraid this is an additional meeting that we try to mitigate the trade, and that's why I think everything is back to front anyway. But we'll pursue. I take it that you probably need to have a minute or something, but so be it. Anyway, what have we got? I think this is where your expertise comes in, Niall. Not that nobody blames you for anything but Sergeant. No. Please, can you introduce the...
Certainly, Chair. Just before I do, members have probably noticed that 1 agenda. Now, Appendix 1 is...
Sorry, Niall, can I just ask, Harris, I think you're going through papers. Can I please ask if you've got an agenda to let Harris and one of them know? I think you ought to follow it, otherwise you're looking at your tables and they're totally different. Anyway, sorry, Niall. I think I said yes, because none of them... Yeah, well, I think because nobody's seen them, they're online. That's the problem. Sorry? Perhaps through indulgence, I think can we defer the minutes for the following meeting, and then we'll have time to digest it. Is that agreeable to all? Oh, thank you. Right. Can we?
Sorry, Chairman, just before I was just going through, Appendix 1, we have a copy of Appendix 1. It's simply the existing fare tariff. And we're going to circulate it because it's useful when looking at the report just to refer back to should you need to.
I think it'd be helpful for the members because they'll have a comparison. Okay, let me do. Over to you now, please. Agenda item 5, I think.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, so if we all turn to page 1 of the supplementary papers, it's agenda item 5. Now, this is a report. It's a Hackney Carriage Table of Fares review. So members were being asked to look at the current table of fares and undertake a review. So if I go through some of the background, members, to assist, the council has the responsibility for setting the fares that they charge within their district. So it's the responsibility of this committee to review those fares and set the fares at an appropriate level. At 2.2, it goes on to try and explain, which is why Appendix 1 is useful, how the fares are made up. They're made up of distance, they're made up of time, and hopefully Appendix 1 goes... They're not the easiest things to read, but I can certainly explain it when the time's appropriate. The table of fares only applies to Hackney Carriage. So it's your Hackney Carriage vehicles working from the ranks and within the district. Private hire vehicles and private hire operators are free to pretty much charge whatever they want, but of course within reason for their customers. So all that we are looking at today is the Hackney Carriage fares and the table of fares. The current table of fares I've alluded to already, Appendix 1, which I've circulated, took effect on the 1st of January 2017. So they haven't been reviewed since that time. So looking at the fares to see whether it is appropriate for a rise with the proposals that have been put forward. So how have we got to where we are today? So in December, I received a proposal, the licensing office received a proposal from a representative of the Worcester Taxi Association in which there was a request for a fare increase. The proposal, as I've highlighted, represented a 55% increase to the fares. So it was felt that there needed to be further discussion before it's presented to members. Clearly, it's quite a significant increase. So the recommendation was that it's discussed. So that's what we did. We put forward the proposal to the Taxi Forum for discussion. We met in February. Now, prior to the meeting, there were lots of other proposals coming forward. So what's happened in between these times? We've received lots and lots of different requests. So what we wanted to do at the forum was come to some sort of joint understanding that a single proposal could be put forward, or if not, multiple proposals from the representative present, but within reason. What you wouldn't want are lots and lots of individuals. We have, I think, somewhere in the region of 360 drivers. Each one of them is entitled to put forward their views if they wish. Of course, it's impractical. We wouldn't be sitting here looking at 360 different proposals, which is why we rely very much on the trade association and the operators to have those discussions with their members and their drivers to put forward suitable proposals. So that's what we did. It was difficult within the meeting to come to one proposal. So the suggestion was that the members of the meeting go away and come forward with suitable proposals to the licensing office with their justifications. So we heard earlier in the public participation lots and lots of justifications for the increase. What we tended to receive were just figures. So what we've had from the members are just figures. We discussed these in the meeting. So the things that were discussed that I've mentioned earlier are obviously the increase in vehicle running costs, the ongoing licensing fee, which they have to pay annually for the vehicles and 3 yearly for the drivers' badges, increase in fuel prices. Now, of course, since we've discussed it, prices have gone up. I'm sure we'll have lots of discussion about fuel prices when the appropriate moment comes. Cost of living increases. Obviously, we have the cost of living. We look at sort of consumer price index, the retail price index, lots of other things that build on factors of increases that are ongoing expenses to all of us, as well as the trade members that we license. So following the taxi forum, as I mentioned, we received a number of different proposals. It was alluded to that a proposal's been put forward which isn't represented in this report. I think the final proposal that was put forward was an agreement of 20% on the current fare. It was just simply that the current fares are increased by 20%. So what I've tried to do at 2.9 of the report is simplify it as best I can. This is where there is a table which demonstrates what the current fare is, bearing in mind Appendix 1, which is the fare table, and what the proposal being put forward. Now, of course, what I've done, I've rounded up and rounded down where appropriate. I've kept the distances the same as they are in Appendix 1, so we haven't altered the distances, which is why the percentage increases are slightly different, up and down. So if we go through Proposal 1, you'll see that the first line we talk about the flag. If I explain what the flag fare is, that is the initial hiring charge that you will see in the vehicle the second you hire them. So if you sit on the back seat, that charge will appear on the meter. Now, in reality, and I'm sure the members will say, if you get out of the vehicle, you should pay that charge. You've hired it, you've entered into an agreement. So that's the flag before you even moved anywhere. That's the hiring charge. Then we have the first mile. So again, it's reflected in there, first mile charge. Then the 2 mile charge. Then just for information, I've included the 5, 10 and 15 mile charges. So it gives you an idea of how those fares and how those percentages pan out when it comes to real money. So we can talk about distances, and we can talk about meters, miles, but it's really how much is a person going to be charged when going on a journey in that Hackney carriage vehicle. So the current charges are in green. So hopefully I've tried to make them as clear as possible. So we have Proposal 1 from the Taxi Association, which is approximately 20%. We also received a proposal from the proprietor of Cathedral Cars and Central Taxis, fairly sizable businesses within the city who represent a number of drivers. Again, their proposal was slightly different. They've put forward a suggestion that the fare tariff should be increased, the initial flag fare distance is reduced, and so forth. So again, at 2.10 of your report, what I've tried to do in that table is again put forward the representative increases of those and the percentage increase that it represents. So again, it's there. Hopefully, it's as clear as it can be, but I'm happy to try and explain it if I need to. So there we have it. We have 2 proposals in front of you. One from the Worcester Taxi Association at 20%, and one from Cathedral and City Central Taxis with the various representative. So when drawing comparisons between Hackney carriage fares in different areas, licensing authorities tend to use the 2 mile mark because it is very different. The fares are very different. They're made up on different distances. So the best way to do this is look at what is a 2 mile journey going to cost. And so I put forward in the report the representative district councils in the locality. So West Midlands, West Mercia. So it gives you a comparison of the current 2 mile costs for Hackney carriage fares in the region. Also included in there is where we sit in the league table. Sorry, I should have probably explained. There is a publication which comes out once a month. It's the Private Hire and Taxi Monthly. Excellent read. But in there, they do have very good statistics. They have very good statistics. They have tables to assist local authorities on all sorts of things. And one of the good tables that they have is exactly that. It's the league table of fares that in the UK. It is freely available, it's open source, you can go onto the internet and have a look at it yourself. Just type in the private hire monthly taxi fares and it will take you straight to that page. So what I'm trying to do is just give you a comparison of the regional prices currently that are being charged in this locality. I've talked about the league table, I've talked about where the proposals will put us. I've tried to highlight and give you some idea of where we are at the moment. I think it's 244th, there or thereabouts, and where the proposals will take us to in the league table. What we need to bear in mind, of course, is fuel prices. It's been mentioned. I think it's unprecedented times. Again, even since writing the report, fuel prices have gone up. They are being reduced. I think it was today that fuel prices again are being reduced slightly. So just bear in mind that they fluctuate. So I tried to represent at the time the fuel prices, how they were in 2017 and how they were in 2022. Obviously, I think we've used the January date available on the website, but we are mindful that even since this was written, they've gone up again. In the report, it represents a 23 to 24% increase in petrol and diesel prices. It's not the only factor you need to take into account. Fuel is an important factor, and the price is very significant, but you also must take into account other factors, things of relevance. We talked about the cost of living. Again, it's very difficult to assess the cost of living. Do we use the consumer price index? Do we use the retail price index? Inflationary costs. And the research that we've done sort of indicates that certainly inflation over that period, 2.2% average each year. So we're looking at somewhere in the region of about 14.2%. We are looking at a fair increase this year. It's been reported that it was somewhere around the 7.5 mark, but again, these figures are skewed because of the pandemic. What we haven't had is a steady year-on-year increase with the fluctuations that finances bring. We've had just an unprecedented period, certainly in the last 3 years, where because of the pandemic, things have reduced, people weren't working, and the like. I mean, at 3.7, the Bank of England actually do an inflationary calculator, which again, I went on, it's free source material, you can go on and key in the figures, and that gives you an indication that goods back in 2017, which cost £100, will now be somewhere in the region of £111. But again, it's reflective of the costs that are taking place at the moment. So having taken into account all of those factors, such as the increase in fuel costs, the annual cost of living increases, price index, retail price index, and the inflationary price index, we're looking at proposal 1, shown at 2.9, appears to be the most reflective of the two proposals that have been put forward. So we look at the preferred option. So what are you being asked to do today? You're being asked to consider the information included within this report on the various options that have been put forward. And you're being asked to, by the trade members, to vary the current table of fares, which you have at Appendix 1, which has been circulated, which has been in place since 2017. But you need to consider what is an appropriate amount to increase it by. So you have the proposals, they are there, they're in black and white. But of course, as elected members, what you need to do is take into account other factors. The travelling public are probably key. They are ultimately the people who are going to be paying any increase that is put forward. So you'll need to take into account that they have been affected by the pandemic. They have been affected by cost of living increases. Goods are increasing all of the time. So whilst I think that certainly even in the meeting we agreed that the time is right for an increase to the fares, the table of fares, it's looking at what is an appropriate amount. So members must be aware of all of those factors that come into play. Not just, obviously, the request of the trade themselves, which is important. That's the reason we're here today. They've put forward this request. But you must also keep an eye and keep a balanced view on the travelling public. Vulnerable members of society who rely on taxis to get them to school with their children, shopping, disabled people who may be their only source of transport to get them around and about and to social occasions. So should you approve a fare increase today, the next stage is that the council will need to advertise that by way of a public notice in the press. This is effectively the consultation period of 14 days, which gives residents and trade members and pretty much anybody the opportunity to put forward comments, either for or against. We have a situation in another local authority. We've been through this process. The fares have been agreed that they've gone up, and we've had an objection. So that's got to go back and be considered. So whilst you may agree on the fares today, there is always the possibility that they will need to be reconsidered at a later date. But of course, if no adverse comments are received, so if we don't receive any comments, well, of course, the fares can come into play. They can be ratified and they can be put into council policy. So effectively, they will be the fares that are being charged by this council. On this occasion, there were no alternative options to consider. You have two proposals that you must consider. They are on the table, so they are there for you, members. The financial implications are laid out in the report. Of course, it talks about, obviously, the financial cost to the council, about advertising, but it also talks about, certainly when it comes to risk, the impact on travelling public and the trade. So what are the risks? Of course, if we set the tariff too low, it's been put forward by the trade that, of course, people can't make a living. If they can't make a living, then they will choose another form of employment. So we may see a reduction in the number of drivers that are on our streets. But likewise, if they're too high, what we will see is people can't afford to use taxis. So certainly of an evening, people would choose to walk home, putting their own safety at risk. The vulnerable members will be unable to afford taxi fares to take them to their normal functions as they did before. So there is a risk, and there is a balanced view here. I think with that, members, I think I've spoken sort of long enough. I'm sure you've got lots of questions. I'm more than happy to ask them. What we have done in the report, because of, just before I finish, is, and I'll come on to the recommendations when we've summed up and gone through our questions, there is a recommendation in there that obviously any adverse comments received, should an fare rise be approved today, that they are delegated to the head of Homes and Communities and the chair, simply because of the time factor. Otherwise, they will need to come back to this committee again in June, which is another 2 to 3 months. Which again, if a fare increase is approved, there will be a further delay. Members, happy to answer any questions. I'll certainly try. Back to you, Chair.
Thank you, Niall. That's very kind. I'm sorry, members, I forgot to say a big thank you to Lloyd, really. And unfortunately, he's not well enough to come here, but he's online to represent himself and try and mitigate some supporting with me anyway. But really and truly, I just want to thank the team and Lloyd, because you brought this efficient at a very short time. And I know that trade came and spoke very accurately that they wanted to bring this forward. I've got you all. So appreciate that. So before I open it to members, thank you, Niall. I think very accurate report. I think I've got Simon. I've got you all.
Thank you, Chair. I have a couple of comments and a couple of questions. First of all, I think it needs to be borne in mind that, especially due to the progressive neglect of the bus services in the county, population is more than ever dependent on presence. Niall's comments about the importance of appropriate. Many of us will have walked past the rank on the cross, which is a kind of litmus test for the health of the trade, and frequently now the places on the rank are not even full. Sometimes you walk past there in the day and there's not a single taxi. This is a situation we've never seen, not in my memory, that you can walk past the rank in the daytime and see no taxi. So we have to be mindful of that. The taxi trade, I think it's fair to say, is almost uniquely exposed. And the extraordinary fluctuations, all upwards in the fuel price, have got to be. It's not possible to expect self-employed who are already not working for the minimum wage to bear this cost. I want to draw us attention to the chart at the bottom of page 3, paragraph 211, which is the league table of costs across the country. And it puts Worcester City Council currently in place 244, 358. With whichever of the options, if we take either of them, one of them would put us in 17th position, one in 39th position. I think it's likely that all of these positions will be changing very quickly as other authorities do the same thing that we're doing now. So I don't think the prospect of promoting us to number 17, for instance, is something that is a realistic position that's going to be there, that's going to hold for very long. All the other districts will have the same problem. It would be interesting, perhaps Niall may have an idea. Modified their charges. I am drawn to a point that Sajjad mentioned in his presentation about the frequency with which we review these tariffs. Now, I know this is something which we do in a responsive way to an application from the trade itself. So on that point, I would advise the taxi trade a bit more on the ball and recognise it is down to them to make these applications. Having said that, this has not been reviewed for more than 5 years. So it's gone way behind where it should be. This is not good for anyone. My personal view is I think we should review this every year. If it's possible for us to do this automatically without perhaps you can give us a response on that. Having said that, with the peculiar times we're in at the moment with the massive rocket in fuel prices, my feeling is actually that we may right now increase the charges, mindful of the hike in prices that exist. In 6 months' time, hopefully this could have gone back. We could have gone down from 189 to £1 a litre. So I would suggest perhaps we should be thinking of revisiting this issue in 6 months' time with a view to reviewing the tariff once more, not necessarily with a view to putting it up, but with an open mind as to whether it goes up or down or stays. So I think that's something that's worth thinking about. The other point I want to make is really to ask you, Chair, why we're here tonight and we didn't deal with this more than 2 weeks. I have to say, I have a suspicion that this could have been dealt with the last meeting. No idea why it was, if it was removed from the agenda, what the motive for that was. But I do see, which kind of supports my suspicion, if you look at paragraph 3.3, where we have the prices of fuel, the price on that chart there for diesel is 151.7, which, as far as I can work out, was somewhere towards the end of February when the price was at that level, which rather suggests that this report has been ready for our use since the end of February. So my question to you, Chair, is why did we not have this dealt with on the 7th of March? Why are we all having to lose another day of our life, sit here now discussing it and potentially ignoring for at least the last 2 weeks the urgency that is being experienced by the taxi trade? It is tempting to say that removing this, if it was removed from the last agenda, rather like throwing the taxi trade under the bus.
Have you finished? I thought, members, can I sort of draw your attention back to this meeting? The questions to the officers was, I know, I will answer the question to me. You've heard it. It would be far better for you to ask me that in the first place. But the report was presented and the officers asked you for questions. I know you alluded to making a nice statement. It's soundbite. It's very good. But then I'll answer your question specifically, the reason this has come today. Deferred it because we didn't have sufficient information. I thought Niall accurately explained that to you. And not only that, because we didn't have it, and now I think you were one of the first ones saying, well, I haven't received papers yet. And I think some of us have said that they're online. We rushed this through. And the reason being, the trade came and said, could you please look at this urgently? Because we can't wait until June. We deferred it for June to get more information, better equipped. And I think member would have been far wiser. And for you to just come and express that I delayed it for that, I think that undermines your intelligence. I've given you, I'm sorry, but I'm not going to draw that. There's other members who want to speak. I've given you my answer. I think you should accept it. If you don't accept it, that's fine. But Jenny, it's your floor. Question to the officers, please, and then you can make statements later.
Chair, I picked up on one, certainly, that I can Councillor, you may need to remind me on some of the others, but you certainly mentioned the review that takes place. You're right, as a council, and all of the other councils, certainly within Worcestershire, for which we administer the service, we are reactive. We react to the requests from the taxi drivers themselves. They are the people that know when the time is right for, certainly for them, when their fares should go up. And it's normally in response to increasing fuel prices. I've seen it before, and I think somebody mentioned that, I can't remember the date, but fuel prices got up to, I think it was about £2.40 a litre. They went very quickly from £1.10 to £2.40, and of course everybody reacted and put their taxi fares up, and of course they dropped back down again to £1 a litre. Of course, I'm not sure, as you said, they were then reviewed again the other way. But it's something that can be put on the forward plan. If members feel that this needs to come annually, we mentioned it was mentioned when we're reviewing our fares and fees, that's something that can be included on the forward plan. That was one of the questions, Councillor.
Thank you, Niall. And can you just please, no, please just wait for 1 second. Karen and I and Niall have discussed this, that we should put this in October in line with the fare increases with us. So that paper will be coming to you in the near future, because we can't have this scenario that we're having tonight. Jenny, can I give you the floor?
Around the country reviewing their fares.
I think everybody's reviewing their fares at the moment. Trade meeting only last week, or a licensing meeting, sorry. Trade very loosely. It was a licensing meeting with regional, and lots of people are going through similar situations. The drivers, it's unprecedented. You know, talk about the full cross. They're all putting forward increased. But again, most of them act on a reactive basis. Very few put it on their forward plan to be reviewed every year. I think certainly from a trade point of view, it has been discussed in forums in the past, certainly within the time since 2017. The difficulty is, and I'm sure they will let you know, there is a cost involved to the trade. When there is an increase, they have to change their meters. There is a cost involved with that. So sometimes, if inflation is low, that they tend to leave it for a number of years and then come with a proposal. Normally, just going back in time to 2017, the proposal before that was 2013, so it was 3 years. Now, at that time, I think that the fares went up around sort of 5%. So those were the requests that are coming forward. So again, it's very different at the moment because of where we're currently at.
Jenny, sorry, you had to wait a bit.
No problem. At least your questions got answered. Licence, what we charge the taxis every year for their licence. How much has that gone up during that period, please? And also, is it in line with similar authorities? You've given information about how much various authorities charge, the taxis can charge, but how much do we charge against other authorities per year, and how much has it gone up since 17?
Councillor, certainly the fees and charges, we advise the council on appropriate fees and charges. It certainly hasn't gone up this year. It didn't go up last year, and it didn't go up the year before. So the fees have stayed pretty stagnant for a number of years. Are they in line with the district councils? It's very difficult. It's comparing apples with pears. They have different on costs. They have different. When it comes to fees, it's very much the council's fees and charges. I'm not sure whether Lloyd would have anything to add on this. I know it's been discussed previously in this meeting. And
I think the only thing I would add is that we set our fees and charges on the basis of cost recovery. So there's a full exercise that sits behind our fees and charges. It's not to generate a surplus or an income. It's to cover the cost of the service, and as the sort of city authority, that will come with more cost, particularly during the nighttime economy.
Thank you for Lloyd. Have you finished, Jenny?
That's very useful. So, in fact, it's only been a very small increase since 17 in the amount we've needed to ask the taxi drivers for.
Clara?
Thank you, Chair. No, I kind of like a bit of help with proposal 2. I think the new flag thing is just they're intending to reduce the distance before it. Yeah, I thought that would be the case. But they mentioned this waiting time, which the first proposal doesn't. So I was wondering, under what circumstances could waiting time be charged? Is this when people, the taxi is waiting for them and they haven't come out? Or is it the case that people who are slower to load, perhaps they're not so able, and they're going to be charged for their impairment? Is that what the waiting time might be about? I don't understand what that waiting time, because it's not in the one proposed. It's not in proposal 1, but it's in proposal 2. So that was my sort of first question. And my second question in related to 2.11. I am a regular, my other half lives in Hereford, so I spend quite a lot of time in Hereford. And I have on 3 occasions gone to find no taxis there. And that's on a Saturday night, just about 10 o'clock, when you'd expect taxis to be readily available. We have called the 2 main taxi firms to find that they're experiencing a 2-hour wait to get a taxi. So we've walked. So although Hereford is shown at 19, their taxi drivers are clearly, their trade is really suffering, that they're not responding to custom. There are people at a rank and they're not, there's no taxis there. So you walk on, and their charges are lower. And we've commented on that ourselves between my partner and myself. And I said, but what is the point in a lower charge when you have no taxis? So it's like, it seems that they have gone to that point and they're going to have to urgently review theirs, because obviously their trade is really suffering. So that's, thank you.
So yeah, going back to the waiting time, it's exactly that. So as soon as the vehicle has been hired, the waiting time comes into play if the vehicle isn't moving. So it's on move, it's on distance and time. So when you're stuck in traffic, for example, you'll see the clock or the meter still going round if you're stuck in a traffic jam. It's so that the drivers are not sort of adversely affected by things like traffic jams, things like people loading, unloading. There is something to be said when do you put the meter on? When the person gets in, when you start loading the vehicle. And we'd like to think that our taxi drivers are very customer friendly and they start once the vehicle has been loaded. But again, it's not really for me to answer.
Thank you, Chair. May I thank our speakers for coming and putting their case tonight. It's been quite helpful. And also for the thoroughness of this report. It certainly was helpful to me, because I don't attend licensing very often. Obviously the taxi trade haven't had a fares increase in the last 5 years. Now, normally, you know, if you're putting a budget together or something like that, it's standard practice to include about 3% for inflation. And that's not far off where we are with this, is it, over 5 years? So that seems to me to be a reasonable way to look at it. They need at least a 15% just to start with, just to stand a fighting chance. We have, of course, had the pandemic to contend with, and people have lost their livelihoods through that. A great many probably aren't in the taxi trade that once were. And so, you know, they've experienced really what I call a triple whammy. I mean, I think the CPI inflation, the inflation rate was about 5.5 throughout March. So we've got that happening as well. The Bank of England is saying that inflation will be in double figures in the not too distant future. And I think, you know, they don't actually make these pronouncements without careful thought. I'm inclined to believe them. So we need to give our taxi trade a fighting chance of staying afloat at the same time as letting residents have a decent deal. It's got to be a compromise. I think we all acknowledge that. And the other thing is I'm a pretty frequent taxi user myself. So the gaps on the rank at certain times of day and on certain days of the week have been very noticeable lately. I mean, I've tended to have to phone for one a lot of the time. And we're not just talking about Fridays when when drivers might well be worshipping, you know, they might have other commitments or Eid or anything like that. We are talking about normal weekdays when there are quite large gaps in time when you can't actually see a taxi on the rank at all, or only a very few. And that's not what we used to experience. So it seems to me that perhaps members of the trade, although they've got licences, are doing other things to stay afloat, you know, to feed their families. It would be nice if we felt they could pursue their profession in a reasonable way. We are seeing fuel price increases right now, and the AA assessment of fuel prices here in the last 5 years is quite revealing, because that was an increase in fuel costs of 21.4 to 24.4, wasn't it, percent over that 5-year period. So one of the things that strikes me about fuel price increases generally is that it is a very immediate and direct cost to this particular line of business. It's not as if it's the same as sort of normal inflation in other sectors of our economy necessarily. I think they do suffer quite immediately from, it's quite sensitive to increases in fuel prices. So we really must be aware of that. I think I would be very much in favour of a minimum of a 20% increase. Whether or not members think we could go further, I don't know, but I'm prepared to listen.
Thank you, Pat. You don't have a question for Niall? Okay, thank you. I think I've got Chris next.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'll try and keep it short because everyone seems to be wanting to talk for a long time tonight without saying a great deal. But anyway, here we go. So, Noel, according to me, inflation was at 1.01% in 2016, 2.56 in 17, 2.29 in 18, 1.74 in 19, 0.99 in 20. So that works out about 14%. So that's the start rate. So we're at 14%. That things have gone up over the last 5 years without the impact of fuel. And we're here to try and identify a reasonable percentage of which to put up the prices. And I don't think anyone's objecting that prices shouldn't go up, or not hearing it at the moment. So start point, 14%. 20% is what they're asking for. Sounds very realistic. I'd be happy to support that now.
Thank you.
And we could get home in time for the Wales game.
Thank you for that, Chris. I was asking...
That's what we're here to do. We're not here to make political statements. We're here to make a decision on people's livelihoods. And we seem to be spending a lot of time talking about everything other than how much are we going to raise the price for the taxi drivers, because that's what I thought we were here to do.
Very grateful for that, Chris. There's other members. I get you. I think it's proposed. Andy is next, and then I got James.
Yeah, thank you. I'll be brief because I think because I'm scared. So 5 years is a long time to go without a raise, and I think most people have recognised that. And but in terms of the process, I think we should have a more robust process that carries more benchmarking data and statistics. Because although there's a sense of urgency, I do feel like there hasn't been a huge amount of member involvement, and it's gone 5 years, and I feel now it's sort of rushed. Things like rank occupancy, driver utilisation. Do you have too many drivers chasing too few fares, for example? Because obviously that's another way of raising income if your utilisation rate is higher. So not for tonight, but I think if we do have a regular process, an annual process, that we can have benchmarking data, comparing to other relevant districts as well, then I think the process could be a lot smoother in the future, and we wouldn't necessarily need these big increases, which I think we're heading towards tonight, and everything just be a bit more sort of routine and normal business. So I'll leave it there for tonight. Of the two, I'll happily support the 20% and a regular review.
James?
Chair, thank you. I'd happily support 20%. We need a thriving, prosperous taxi trade in this city. The members of the trade have been, 5 years is a very, very long time for this not to have been properly addressed, and we need to be quite clear tonight that we're going to support a very critical part of the local economy, the taxi trade. It needs to be something that we revisit at a appropriate time, whether it's annually, whether it's whatever point we do that. We simply can't go down the route of waiting 5 years again before we look at this, because that's frankly not acceptable. So I'd support 20%.
Thank you, James. That's very kind. I think, Simon, you have the last floor, then I got Karen, then I got Linda.
Yeah, I'd just like to say I'm in agreement with the other speakers that I think proposal 1, which is the 20% increase, is the one that I would support. I would just restate my suggestion that perhaps we could put this on a forward plan to review it in 6 months in view of this is a substantial increase. If things change in the right direction, we may be able to reduce this burden on the general public. The other thing is just a request to the taxi trade that I'm sure they're very conscious of the fact that many people who are dependent are already not able to afford to run their own private motor car. So a lot of the people who are being transported in taxis are the most vulnerable in society. And I would request that, I'm sure you're already conscious of this, but please be as accommodating as possible. Tariff rates are the maximum fees, but where it's obvious that somebody's struggling.
Karen. I got you, Jenny. Karen, it's your.
Thank you, Chair. I've had a quick look at that website. Thank you, Niall. Very, very good to see. Because what I've noticed is that the people at the moment, obviously the areas which are close to us, Birmingham City Council haven't reviewed their fees since 2012. And I'm sure they're going to be reviewing them soon. And they're currently at 139. Witchaven's 2013, Redditch is 2018, Walsall's 2012, Solihull's 2012. So actually, I really don't think we're going to be in this 17th or 39th league position for very long at all. I too am concerned about residents who have got hospital visits and the like who may struggle. I do think that this isn't for tonight, but a wider question would be is what we can do to help taxi drivers. And I was really pleased the other day when I saw quite a few taxis which were hybrid, and I saw an electric taxi as well. And I'm wondering whether we can do actually more in the taxi ranks with some charging. Whether we can do something to reduce their licence cost if they have this vehicle, if we can give them some kind of help to change their vehicle so that...
Sorry, you have to come back to the fare.
Can I finish?
No,
can I just finish,
you're
please?
Going away from script. Can you come back?
I'm just making a point that then they will be less, they'll be more resilient to these particular petrol rises that we have. So that if they've got costs associated with changing your fares, you don't want to be changing them every 6 months because of the costs that they will incur. It's a more balanced view in the long term, perhaps.
Thank you. Can I please bring you back to the relevant item that's on there? I know we like soundbites. Jenny, I think... Jenny, I think you've got last. I think Karen, Nida's going to be the last speaker.
Bus fares have gone up by a lot more than 20% in the last 5 years. I think that's one point. And tomorrow, food delivery drivers are going to be having some kind of protest action because they can't afford to live on the amount of money they're getting. So it is very common across the piece that transport costs are going up. I'm interested that private hire obviously isn't included in that, and it'd be useful to have an idea how much those private hire charges are likely to go up, and whether they are the people who actually will support our citizens in the short term for mitigating these prices. But maybe you can give some advice on that.
Jenny, I'm sorry, but that's not on the table, I'm afraid. You're going off the script again. Neither. Can you turn your mic off, please?
I'd just like to come and say thank you to our speakers for coming today. We really appreciate your comments and you being here and telling us how you feel. I think the whole point of this meeting today was, as all us councillors are very aware of the situation, and I know you guys are frustrated about how things have changed and how the petrol prices have gone up. But the whole point for us to try to bring this together is because we're very aware and we actually want to make a decision to be able to help the trade. I think there's no councillor in here who would disagree with it at that point. I'd like to thank Niall and the officers for bringing such a brilliant report to us, where we have the information, the short time that we could be able to make this decision. I think I'm in key with what everybody else is saying, and I'd like to second Chris's motion to bring the fare up to be able to support the tax.
Thank you for that, Neither. That's very helpful. We have a proposed and seconded.
I would like to add that I think we are already in discussions. We are aware that, you know, it has taken a long time, and it has been 5 years before this has been able to come through. And while it is numerous reasons also why the tax trade has not brought it forward, and it might be it was too minimum an amount they wanted to change to. But we are looking at situations where we can maybe bring it yearly, or so that it can be reviewed and be a part of the process rather than just bringing it ad hoc situations when things like this happen.
Thank you, Neither. Chris, can I indulge your second? You've proposed option 1, so can I? And I think Neither you proposed seconded option 1. Is that right?
Yeah, the 20%.
Is that okay?
And I think it might be fair if not.
I think if you, recommendation option 1, could you just recap, Niall? That'd be very helpful.
Thank you, Chair, members. Yes, now we've had an opportunity now to look at the report that are presented in the background. You've looked at the various proposals. Obviously, option 1 is the favourable proposal at the moment. Would it be worth me just going through the recommendations,
yes, please.
Chair,
yes, please.
if that's useful? So, committee, you're asked today, first of all, to note the submissions. The submission of a formal request from the Worcester City Taxi Trade members and the Worcester City taxi drivers to review the council's Hackney Carriage Fare tariff as set out in the report. So you noted that. And then at 1.2, you're asked to determine from the information presented in the report a preferred option, and then instruct officers to progress the statutory process for consultation on the preferred option by way of the public notice. And then finally, to delegate authority to the Corporate Director of Operations, Homes and Communities, in consultation with the Chair, to consider any feedback from the consultation process on the preferred option and implement the revised tariff.
Option 1.
Yes.
Did I say?
You didn't. You just said to declare a preferred option. So sorry, I think for clarity, Chair, the recommendations are as set out. However, recommendation 1.2 asked members to determine a preferred option, which has now been proposed and seconded as option 1. So actually the recommendation will now read in relation to 1.2 that option 1 be agreed, and as part of the 3 recommendations, Chair. Thank you.
So can we sort of have a show of hands, please, for option 1 as recommended on the note paper, 1, 2 and 3.
It's unanimous.
Thank you very much. I think it's unanimous. That's very helpful. And once again, I thank the committee and thank you, Lloyd. Hope that is the business of the day. I'm sorry that slightly longer than I thought, but nevertheless, we got there. Thank you.